I grew up in a community of 1,000 people.
Wow.
And I really feel that because of my mom and dad and that small town experience, giving was just a part of who we were. Because you knew everybody, you loved everybody, you were connected to everybody. This is very much a country way of living. Whether you're a rancher or not, it's country living.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first series of You Are What You Give. Until now, we've been doing individual interviews with fascinating personalities who help us tell the story of generosity, giving, and building lifelong value. In that process, every single story has kind of taken us in a different direction, but now there's a theme. These next episodes are going to be about the theme of how Texans give. Why how Texans give? Well, first of all, giving always happens in a context. In this context, we're going to talk about a community, a broad community, a huge state in the United States of America. In fact, maybe we'll talk a little bit about the size of the state and the expanses of the state, but we're going to try to take these different points of reference through different personal experiences and understand what is the giving culture of Texas like. Maybe there'll be additional series from additional places, perhaps other places in the United States, other places around the world, but this series is going to be dedicated to Texas. So the first disclaimer, if I say y'all, that's intentional. If you don't know what y'all means, it is you in the plural in Texas. Okay, so y'all means you in plural. This is the first time that I have two guests on the same episode. Revis Daggett and Lashawn Wardlaw McIvor, two ladies, Lone Star ladies. We'll talk about the Lone Star ladies topic or title later. Two Lone Star ladies from the great state of Texas. Not only from the great state of Texas, but these ladies are both ranchers. They're not only ranchers, they're businesswomen. Not only are they businesswomen, but these people are dedicated to lifelong giving, which is, of course, why we have them on this show. So, Revis, Lashawn, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having us. And I have so thoroughly enjoyed all of your other shows so far. From Coach Pearl, which we were all basketball players in our family, so I loved his insight. And then Kathy McMorris and all the rest, and from Edinburgh, Texas, having the Thanksgiving. So I'm just like to be a part of this. But the first Texans, I mean, how awesome is that? And your y'all sounded really good, Avi. Like
Thank you. I've been working on it.
We will take you. You can come to the ranch anytime with your y'all. That's
Thank you
perfect.
very much. That is an honor. That is an honor, a badge of honor.
Amen. I even say, I like the term grafted in. So, Avi, we are going to graft you in to full Texas citizenship. You're fluent.
Well,
You are
thank you so
fluent.
much. And the three of us, we've spoken in the past about Texas, and I mentioned Lone Star Ladies. We'll talk about that specific title a little bit later in our conversation. But there are two Lone Star states, right? There's the Lone Star state that you live in, the great state of Texas, and there's the Lone Star state that I live in, the great state of Israel. And so there's some sort of relationship there. Perhaps we could explore that also. But first, I just want to jump right in and understand, I mentioned that you're both ranchers. What does it mean to be a rancher? We want to talk about giving and we're going to talk about generosity, but first, what's a day in the life look like?
Well, I think that it really has changed through the years, right? Of whenever I was being raised. We're nearly 100 years old here at this ranch, but we grew up, I'm in Southwest Texas. It's right between Brackettville and Del Rio, Texas. So for a bigger city, from San Antonio, we're 120 miles west. So we're right on the Mexico border, Del Rio, Texas. So where we are, like into town where this wool and mohair business was, my great-grandfather started, called Del Rio Wool and Mohair. That was the place where ranchers would take all of their wool and mohair. So you'd shear your sheep, and you'd shear your Angora goats, like Angora, sweaters and things like that that's made out of. You would shear twice a year. So you'd put that in those sacks, right? I remember just stomping down those wool sacks, and we'd load those up onto a trailer. And then you would take those into town. So then they would sell this, and then this would be all over the country where you might see some of these woolen products that would be sold in different places. But that's where we grew up, because this part of the country, Southwest Texas, was that. But as of recent, as I think about coming down and people laugh at me, our friends that have never been in the country, our driveway, it's a couple miles down the road to get to the house. But is that now, because of the coyotes and caracara birds, we really have had a hard time because of lambing when our sheep would have babies, or, kidding when our goats would have babies. They were really eaten up by coyotes or these caracara birds that would take care of them. So we now raise cattle. Pretty much raising just cattle here at the ranch, and then we have hunters. But we grew up in kind of a different type of way of rounding up sheep and goats more than even cattle, and grew up rodeoing. So our family was really close. We didn't have phones at that time, and so you would just load up and you go to rodeos on the weekend, and you were roping calves, or you were running barrels or running poles, and that type of thing. So that was kind of our ranch life and how we grew up. But my great-grandfather and grandfather, and then my dad is still ranching. He's 84 years old. So It's been in the family for a long time. But
Has that changed the lifestyle in any way, shape, or form?
I think a lot, actually. It was lots of sheep and goats back in the day is what we really raised, when you look at that, and now have the cattle. The shift of a lot of folks aren't coming from generation to generation in the ranching world, because it can be tough. I feel like if ranchers aren't really turning over to the next generation in an earlier stage, really it becomes where they sell those ranches. Or so I do feel like maybe that is a little bit different. Where I feel like it's really the same is ranching and farming folks, agricultural people. I mean, really, when I was out in Judea and Samaria, working hard, those little hilltop communities, doing it together, caring for each other, you knew your family place is still there.
So
It's still a very much thing where everybody comes together, and you're working for the same thing. But it is different, because I feel like maybe it's not generation. Now you're having a few places being sold.
right. So I want to talk about things being sold, and everything from from one family maybe to another, or from agriculture to data centers. And maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm going to shift for one moment from Lashawn over to Revis. Revis, you said you married in to the ranching community, if you will. Why would you marry into ranching?
Interestingly enough, my grandfather used to herd cattle open range from Texas to Wyoming. He would play the fiddle around the campfire. And when he decided to settle down at 35, he bought him a little spread, as we call it in Texas, up in the Panhandle. And my mother was raised on a small ranch. My father was raised as a farmer. And then when they married, they moved to West Texas and both became educators. So
Okay.
I was hearing of the world of ranching, of farming, and then being right in the throes of educating. But the funniest part of it all is that I went to a summer camp that was a ranch, and I met my husband when we were 13.
Oh my
Of
gosh.
course, we went our separate ways for 2 decades. And then when he tracked me down, the idea of actually initially I didn't want to be a rancher's wife. It is tough work. And in that principle alone is profound giving. But in the end, I came to a place where in my heart I was content with it and I loved it. So now I drive, like you said, 2 miles down a dirt road just to get to the front door of the house from the farm to market road or the state highway, depending on which way we come in. We are located in Pecos County. The county seat is Fort Stockton. That's where we check our mail. My husband's family has been there since 1906, and it's passed through the generations. So, We're now 5 generations strong in Pecos County. But in the end, when I married my husband, he said, I promise you I will never be a sheep and goat rancher. And he has stayed true to his word. We shifted to cattle, although we're not big cattle barons. We just have a few. But my brother-in-law, who shares the inheritance with my husband, he raises a pretty significant number of cattle, as does my father-in-law. And my husband and I have shifted more to the hunting side. You heard LaShawn mention we have this, and we have hunters. And so it's typical in West Texas that you lease parcels of land for hunters to come in and look for varmints or for deer. We're very, very rich in mule deer and whitetail. And so people love that kind of meat. And so
Right.
we provide that as well. We built a high fence, and our day-to-day routine includes hunting exotic animals like elk or red stag, axis, black buck, various other kinds of antelope or exotic sheep and goats.
So, I mean, you've taken us all the way across not only the great expanses of Texas or even just your backyards, but into all these different kinds of industries and sub-industries of farming, of ranching, of the different kinds of cattle, the different kinds of livestock, and the process that each of your families have undergone essentially over a number of generations. So one thing I think that everyone who's watching, listening, tuning into this is understanding that there's something deeper here than just happening to live on a ranch, right? There are the family connections, there's the history, and that obviously bears a lot of significance to each of you. And I do again want to talk about some of the shifts that have been going on, but I want to first circle back, Revis, to something you said. You spoke about profound giving, just being in this environment as profound giving. What do you mean by that?
I mean that it is truly a part of being the backbone of America. You're putting food on the table of families. And it is amazing when I sit around and have coffee in Fort Stockton with the old timers, rain is consistently in the conversation. So why is it so much giving? Because there's no guarantee what any given year is going to look like temperature wise or, moisture wise or freezing, freezing weather and the different things that happen that could be unexpected, not anticipated, and then the expenses that come with it, the diseases that creep in and can wipe out herds. So at any given moment, you could be a millionaire and the next day you have nothing. It's almost
And
like being in the stock market.
so there's the ups and downs. And that, by the way, first of all, I think it's really, really important for anyone who thinks that, I don't know, meat grows on a grocery shelf, right?
Right.
That's kind of where the city folks, if you will, that's
Yes.
where we meet the other end of that. And there are some people, that don't have a taste for meat because they're vegetarian or
Yeah.
they're not into hunting for whatever reasons. That everyone with their own, let's call it life worldview or
Sure.
value system. But this concept that you're sharing, which I think is so critical, I just want to make sure I've understood it correctly. When you're talking about the giving, am I understanding that you're referring to these families, these ranching families, and we've heard already that a ranch is not just an individual, it's a community. It starts with the family and it grows beyond that. That they're contributing, like you said, to the backbone of America, to society, to just making sure that everyone else has food on their table and that they're willing to withstand the disease, the temperature, the uncertainty, because someone's got to do that. Is that where this is coming from?
That's exactly right. I mean, you nailed it perfectly. It doesn't grow on a grocery shelf. We even got one response on Facebook when we posted a picture of a hunt. Someone put, "Oh, come on, you guys, go to Walmart and buy your meat where they don't hurt animals." And I thought, are you really kidding me? And the thing about the hunting is you get fresh meat. And let me tell you, we we are very connected with our local butcher, and more times than I can count on both hands, we've taken the prize from the hunt, provided it to the butcher, who then takes it to families that are in
That,
need.
yes,
Yeah.
we do the
And I
same.
know that's not foreign to the Wardlaw family.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do the same, and it's so true. I was just at a thing in South Texas, far South Texas, and with the Texas Beef Council, and just talking about things that they're doing now for education. It's really wonderful trying to get that education out there and what they're doing to be proactive. But the folks that were there were primarily ranching families, passing down to generations, but trying to do the right thing that helps really out most folks. I mean, it really is. But just like you said, that we did a lot of that too, where you take in those extra white-tailed does or whatever you may have, and you do give to families and things like that. So yes, that's the
Yes.
way that we did things as
Yes.
well.
So I didn't know that there was a beef council. It would make sense that there would be. And LaShawn, I've heard now both from Revis and from you this concept of education. What are you referring to there when you say, in other words, that kind of giving or contributing through education? What does that look like?
Well, I think, I used to have a casting company. I was in the movie world for quite a while. And we were filming a movie down here. I'm trying to remember which one it was, Rio Diablo or Gambler 5 or something. Anyway, we were filming over at Alamo Village. We have a place where John Wayne filmed the movie The Alamo, and now is used as a movie set. So some of those folks came over. Well, one of my friends, he and I were driving down the dirt road, and we ran over a jackrabbit. And so what I mean by that is we used to have a lot of rabbits here, and he and I were just continuing our conversation. And so we pull up to the house. He goes, LaShawn, did you see back there? You just ran over that little rabbit. And I was like, oh, I did. But you know what I'm saying? Things that are natural to us, that was not something. Now, will something eat that? Yes, eventually. But when they got to the house, we ended up having different types of food that none of my movie friends had really had. They loved it. They got the history of it. And I'm not really good at all this aging and when you do kill a deer and how you put it up, which parts do you eat? And it was just such a good education, and they loved it. And they loved the idea of just being and learning something different than they do like in the city of just going to get their meats and not really understand, oh, you mean that's really where venison comes from, or that's what y'all do? And, and cattle the same way. And we used to eat lots of cabrito and lots of lamb meat back in the day also.
It's interesting because, I don't know, I guess ironically, last night, my son, who is 11 years old, just about 12, his peers are getting ready for their bar mitzvah.
Yes.
And so they go to a series of workshops that a friend in the community runs these workshops, and he decided to do a creative workshop about ritual slaughter. Now, these kids were fascinated. He was going to do some actual slaughter himself. That didn't work out. But even showing a little bit downstream what the already slaughtered animal looks like, and then showing them and the show and tell, fascinating. These kids, their eyes are popping out of their heads because you really don't see. You see things in the packaging, in the grocery, and it doesn't occur to you that if there's roadkill, that might actually become dinner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not good. And
You're
by the way,
right.
in Jewish ritual slaughter, it just doesn't work that way. It can become dinner. But like you said, LaShawn, you're bringing people into a world that's very, very connected with this, pardon me for lack of a better term, but the circle of life. I know that kind of
Yes.
brings me to Simba and the Lion King, but it's that real connection. It's very, very real. And then this understanding or appreciation that somebody has to do this. Somebody's got to help America
Yes.
put food on the table. And these people are, day in and day out giving of themselves for that. Now, I want to shift a little bit as we speak about the giving, not in that circle of life per se, but amongst the community. And you started speaking about taking care of the folks, the families that maybe they are having some trouble. Maybe their ranch isn't doing as well. Maybe they had a great year last year, and this year it's crash and burn because, like you said, maybe there's a disease that hit their flock, and whatever the case might have been. But I just have to as like an interlude, if you will, share just my quick experience in understanding the expanses, the sizes of Texas. And I've been to Texas many times. But before I came on the recent road trip where we went around, and by the way, Revis, you were a critical part of that trip, and hopping into Sabra, your
Yes. Yes.
your expedition, going all
Yes.
over town. But the expedition is like, that's like a compact car in Texas, right? I show up, I come in, land at the airport, and I rent, the smallest car I can for just to get an economy car. The smallest car in Texas is a standard SUV. And I'm totally happy. I sit in the SUV, and as long as my head is not hitting the ceiling, I am a happy camper, right?
Good.
All is good. But then I get onto the open road. And on the open road in Texas, it's like you're
Trucks.
Simba
And more
in the
trucks.
middle of a stampede.
Pickup trucks.
Yeah, you are Simba in the middle of a stampede. And everyone in Texas is gracious and polite. If there's one kind of discrimination in Texas, it's against people with small cars. Maybe it's not against the people, it's against the small cars. And you kind of get this look, or you feel like you're getting a look, this will be in my best Texan accent, and maybe it's not very good, but it's like, hey, you in that small car, they got lanes, special lanes for cars like you. It's called the
That's it.
sidewalk.
That's it.
Avi,
You on get, right? And so,
It's so good.
but I mean, it's the only thing that I think, because everything's so big, and you've got
Yes.
the 95-year-old grandmothers or great grandmothers who are driving semi-trailers, or at least that's what it seems like.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's the size, and I'm not sure how that lends itself to this culture that actually ultimately is more perhaps laid back and very, very, I guess there's room for everybody, so maybe a little bit more accepting. And in that, and here kind of I want to get to that point of understanding how community works. So you gave the example of the relationships with the folks, who don't have. What other kind of giving is part of the culture in the rancher community?
So, one of the things that I was thinking about is that um, there's scholarship opportunities often, very often. And so ranchers will encourage others to go into agricultural industry, ag business, ag science, different kinds of possibilities, and offer scholarships to graduating seniors from their local communities or from their county communities. There are livestock shows, and so ranchers will go and attend. And when the kids show the livestock, it could be a pig, it could be sheep, it could be goats, it's all kinds of possibilities. But in the larger shows, the grand champion is sold off, and sometimes for big money. And it might be a bank that shows up to buy it. It might be an oil and gas company that shows up to buy it. But I can guarantee you the ranchers will be there sowing seeds into the lives of those kids for doing what they're doing.
So,
And so
Reverend, the proceeds for these kind of events are going to go to what?
directly to the kid to help them cover all the cost of the feed and all the cost of travel to go to the show to learn about livestock and animals and competition, etc. But then there are so many other possibilities of giving. I mean, just your traditional within the community, someone's having a struggle, there's fundraisers for cancer, there's fundraisers for a family who someone lost their life and you want to help with the funeral expenses. I mean, ranchers come typically from small towns. And in that small town environment, you're very, very connected. You may not have the same last name, but it feels like everybody's family. I grew up in a community of 1,000 people.
Wow.
And I really feel that because of my mom and dad and that small town experience, giving was just a part of who we were. because you knew everybody, you loved everybody, you were connected to everybody. This is very much a country way of living, whether you're a rancher or not. It's country living. It's like Little House on the Prairie.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but I want to just quickly touch upon what you mentioned, and then I want to go back to LaShawn. Uh, the community culture that you spoke about here is really interesting. There are across the United States and across the globe, but certainly across the United States, there are some sometimes very large foundations that are raising significant capital to do all kinds of things. Maybe they're building a research center, and maybe they're actually giving funds to people in the community, et cetera, et cetera. Am I hearing from you that people are not, obviously, if that's available, great, but you're not going to wait for the big foundations? You're going to kind of come and make it happen on your own?
Right. There's no application process, right? There's no application process. You're connected. You already know each other.
You know who
And
needs, and
right.
is it embarrassing for the person who needs, or it's like, okay, last time I was down and everybody helped me out. This time my neighbor's down. We're all going to help him out. How does that work?
It's the ebb and flow. It's the genuine, authentic process of life, of going through the hilltops and the valleys. I personally went through cancer with 1% odds to survive. My husband was teaching in one school district. I was teaching in another school district, the next county over. And then I had grown up in yet a different school district, a couple of counties over. All 3 counties, all 3 school districts, all 3 communities activated, pitched in, and I can't even begin to tell you how profoundly they showered us with love and support and help. I couldn't have done it on my own. And it didn't, in that instance, matter if I was a rancher or not. I was just a part of the West Texas culture. I was a small town kid living my best life out in the West as a country girl, a West Texas country girl.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think the precious part of that, Revis, I love your walk, and it's a beautiful walk, and how folks did that, and how you have just shown. What's my word I'm looking for? But just brilliantly came through all this. And that's exactly right. And I think the thing that country folks do, or even other folks do, when they give or they do, it's not like, look at me, I'm going to give this. A lot of that's just done privately, or it's just something that's sent to your mailbox, or it's just something that shows up under your desk, or that is one great thing. I think the giving is really done not for the pride part of it, of look what I'm doing, but it truly is for the genuine love that you have for that person or that family. We had a huge fire in Fort Davis where Revis is talking about. And I mean, it was almost the next day where we knew the families were some of these homes. We didn't lose lives, we lost homes. I mean, it was just like that. All the area was coming in, helping, making things happen before anybody else came in. But that's just what you do naturally. It's just one of those, I think it kind of is a small town thing or a country thing, but it's one of those things you know without a doubt you're waking up that next morning to go help out those folks.
So,
Just
LaShawn,
like,
maybe the difference here between what the city folks and the country folks, how they might address a challenge like a fire, is what you just said. You said that we had a fire in Fort Davis, but you don't live in Fort Davis. You live, how far
not
do
anymore.
you live from Fort Davis?
About 4 hours, but I was living there at the time, and so I was able to help out. But I still was such a part of that community and loved that community. But yes, it is a we thing. It doesn't matter if it's right here in Brackettville with the situation. It is a we thing because it is considered family, and it's considered not them. I've never thought about them. It's like, let's go. Let's get, you want to help all those just right around you. That's for sure.
And LaShawn, what you said about that quiet gift, which is amazing because, of course, that means that the person, not only are they not embarrassed to receive the support, they don't even know who gave them the support. They couldn't say no. They couldn't send it back, even if they tried. And I'm careful not to promote the book that I wrote called Kosher Giving. I'm really not promoting it. I'm just pointing out that in that book, I actually refer to the Maimonides, the teachings of Maimonides from about 1,000 years ago, and how he teaches about the different types of giving, or essentially he refers to them as different levels of giving. And one of the highest levels of giving is actually giving without people knowing that who it's coming from. There's also giving and not knowing who it's going to, but not knowing who it's coming from, because you spare the person that any degree of embarrassment, even if everyone's pitching in. And I really think that's amazing. I do have a question though, LaShawn, and I think this is part of where I want to refine a little bit in this conversation. There's this giving culture, and there's a familial culture. There's the commitment to the land. There's the commitment to this greater cause of providing. And there's all throughout that, there's kind of sort of a message. What would be the message that you were to carry back then, and perhaps even today, when you say, the sport of rodeo, or the culture of Texas, or the ranching culture? What is the message that you're ultimately sharing?
What I feel is that most ranching families, most farming families, even agriculturally, and even when I traveled the whole state of Texas, is what you would find with hardworking people and hardworking folks that were willing to go do good for others. And it really was. It was right there when they'd stick their hand out and say, "Yes, ma'am," and nice to meet you, and look at you in the eyes. And it was the time of where you'd have these little boys that would just take off those hats and "Ma'am, come on through that door." It was manners. It was hard work. It was how they were raised, right? And I think that hard work is because a lot of those are just loading up in that pickup truck and going to feed the cattle, or they're getting on horseback and they're helping and going to help in the pens, or they're doing whatever. But I did see that across the state of Texas, especially with agricultural related kiddos and families, that they really had that within them. But I think that within them actually led to goodness. And most were raised with that Bible. I think that the family, the hard work, being in his word, they knew right from wrong. And so really, as time goes on, you could see that younger generation of these others raising them up. And then you can almost see that generation coming behind, because that was instilled in them. That was who they knew that they were going to become.
So here's where we talk about the shift that we've referred to. That was 40 years ago, and you've spoken now in the past tense. And here, maybe I'll get back to you, Revis, where you already started speaking a little bit about, well, what do you do to make ends meet? What if the season just isn't going very well, and you have to find alternative forms of income? And maybe we can try to figure out, has something changed in the culture altogether? Is the next generation following the footsteps of the previous generation? Are people still tipping their hats? Are people as polite as they were? And by the way, again, my sense, other than the small car thing, my sense is that people in Texas are very polite, and there's that humility. But again, is something changing?
Well, I think probably most significant is the access to education. So now, just within my husband's family alone, when you had members who didn't have opportunities for college education, we now have engineers in the family. We have doctors in the family. We have lawyers in the family. We have educators in the family. We have coaches in the family. And so I believe what's happening is that there's more opportunities, and the next generation is being presented with possibilities that 40 years ago it was there, but maybe not as prolific. 80 years ago wasn't necessarily there. It was just assumed you're born into a ranching family, you're going to ranch, this is what you do, and this is how you do it. So I think a part of the challenge is somehow communicating and passing on the love for what you do. And how unique and special it is to be that connected to the land. Every ranching family that I know is God-fearing. And I think it's because they're connected to the animals. They see his creation. Then they see the seasons so clearly, so profoundly. Again, they see him. They see the sunrise. They see the sunset. Again, he's there. And I think this is a very, very significant part of the ranching experience. Even the fact that we rotate the animals so that we can rest the land.
Right.
It's a very biblical concept. It's this to me is profound. And I can even tell you that among many of the Hispanic families, the ranchers, or even those who have lost land that are, say, day workers, whatever the case would be, they understand and know the ritual killing. It's profound. So I think there's a lot of biblical history there among us that we don't altogether know and understand some of the roots, but the ranching we do and can connect with that. So our hope is to pass that love to the next generation, keep them involved.
Yes, and that was such a good point, Revis. I loved how you said that, because you kind of said it differently than the way I really thought. That was a great point. And I think, like you said, the generational thing, it is harder now. But I think the other thing of that, like we're talking about the giving and the hard work, I do feel like those prior generations really raised them up that way. It's what they saw coming down. My grandmother, y'all would have loved her. She, and talking about how to raise, have ranch in Southwest Texas. We don't have the oil and gas. We're pretty dry. We depend on weather. We depend on rain a lot. And we had a place called Alamo Village, and it's where we filmed different shows. So we had the Alamo, but we were open 50 years to the public. So you came into the front gate. It was a dirt road going down. You'd see longhorns, and we'd have music shows and gunfights with a canteen and a general store and trading posts. Well, my grandmother, this is what I mean, what we watched. From our gate proceeds, it didn't matter. She took a percentage of that she gave to the Jewish folks. I was raised with that. I was raised with that Bible and why she did that and how she saw the correlation in the Bible and loving.
Why specifically, Lashawn? Well, why specifically to the Jewish folks? In other words, what was it, like a tithe that she did?
Yes. So from those proceeds, she always did. And I believe it's John Hagee that was really, he was real pro-Israel. And then also God's Learning Channel that was in Odessa and Midland. And she watched that. But she just had a love didn't have a lot. I wouldn't say she was able to give tons monetarily. But she had a love of that Bible. And that's what I saw growing up. Mm-hmm. So when we went to Israel recently, I just knew I wanted to go. And to be able to go travel like Revis and I did, starting in the north and coming to the south and going to Judea and Samaria and seeing those hilltops. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's the same cactus of West Texas. It looks same. It looks like the same land. And look at these hardworking people out here. And look at the how they're raising their kids. I just felt an immediate similarity to the country. And to probably to the generations that were there and the generations to come and how they're raising their kids. I don't know. I just saw such similarities. And like you're talking about, Revis, the land, but that generations of who raised up these folks and how Mama Shay was such an instrumental person in my life. And seeing how she gave and how she actually was so much in his word all the time.
So I want to hang on that point, Lashawn, and with this I want to kind of bring this all together. You mentioned, we spoke about the land and we spoke about community, but I think that one of the key words, if we were to kind of count the number of words, how many times they popped up in this conversation, the word generation or generations has popped up very, very many times. And it seems to me that one of the key elements of giving is how we invest indeed in the generations to come. Children are not something that we have in the sense that we have them as possessions, heaven forbid. We have them as a responsibility. They are entrusted to us so that we can invest in them. And you've spoken about, both of you have spoken about the different kinds of ways that you as families, as a community, are investing in those next generations. And what I think, what I'm hearing in the conversation, and I'm not putting any words in anyone's mouth, this is what I'm hearing, is this kind of, how do we create that continuity? How do we create, on the one hand, the opportunities, and on the other hand, making sure that we do not lose the key or core value elements? And I think that question mark is a very fair one, and it's also something that's very true to what we're talking about when we speak about giving. We can have an orientation or a posture that says, I want to pour into the following, to the next, to the other, to the land. I want to invest my time. I want to roll up my sleeves and work hard, right? That ethic to work hard, but I don't know where it's going to go. And I can't have any guarantees on that. And the courage to have that expedition. And here I want to kind of bring things together with what we mentioned earlier in the episode, which is the Lone Star ladies. It's not just that you happen to live in the Lone Star State and that you happen to be ranchers, but you were both genuinely on a journey moving forward. And you've shared with me your plans to have your own podcast. And I hope that this will be a nice promo for you, because you are, and these are further conversations, you don't have the solution, but you're ready to wade into the waters and open questions and figure out what a conversation looks like going forward. Do either of you want to share a little bit about what this podcast of yours is going to look like?
LaShawn, it was your idea. You share and I'll add to it.
All right. I am your honest Texas ranch girl. So I just want to tell you, I'm the simple girl of the bunch, meaning I am a girl that has questions. I've had a childlike faith forever and ever, raised my kiddos that way, talk about the next generation of giving and hopefully actions, and our kiddos, I'm seeing them do things that are just awesome and doing that in front of their kids. So I do believe as next generations, we just have to keep parenting that up. But I went on to Israel in May with Revis and a group, Texans for Safe Israel, which, by the way, we got to give to some really wonderful places. It was awesome what we got to do, and Americans for Safe Israel, which was just another whole wonderful thing. But Revis and we rented a car for 3 days and just jumped in and went straight north and went up to the Golan Heights and to the very northern part, right there on the Syrian border, and got to visit with people and see people, and it was different, right? Well, along those ways, I was your girl that would ask Revis, like, so now in the Bible, when we're talking about this area, now what do you think about that? Or let me go read and let's look at that tonight. Or we would do things like that. But I was the simple question girl. I knew I have a love. I know why my love is there. It is deep within right there. But I just had question upon question. And so Revis was kind enough to put up with me. And sometimes her reasoning when things were over my head, and I was like, all right, let's go over that one again, right? But it was so wonderful because it was such a way to present to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just wish that all my family and friends were here because they were going to have the same questions that I did.
Yeah.
And I had someone to talk to where we were able to share and kind of work through some things. And so I was like, Revis, this is exactly what we'd been kind of talking about was exactly what I feel like so many folks would want to hear. And just to see the visuals and to see places that we went to and to talk about different experiences. And within that little north to south just being 6 hours, where to us that's not a big deal, right? But to see from where we went from one place to the next, we just started talking. I was like, we should share this. If folks can get to Israel, that is awesome. But if they can't, we're able to share a part of that Bible that is so precious. So that's kind of how we got started in the whole conversation.
Yeah. So there, LaShawn and I are in Israel, and we're both like totally captivated by who God as our creator is and who these people are in the land. And we thought, well, we have a suspicion this is happening to a lot of folks. And in fact, it is. And LaShawn said, I want to be able to answer their questions. I want to help connect them to experiences.
Revis and Lashawn, first of all, there's so much in this conversation. Before we pressed the record button, we knew that we could easily have a 3-hour conversation and only scratch the surface. And
Right.
now that we start speaking about a whole additional set of conversations in the form of the Lone Star Lady podcast, which is coming soon, and we'll be sure to keep our community posted about it when it actually airs. And with that, I really want to thank you both for this time. Thank you so much for making yourselves available. To me, the underlying theme of why I thought this would be the first episode for this series of How Texans Give is this kind of cultural piece. Because really, we know that everyone in one way, shape, or form, we'd like to think people give, but there's an entire community culture here, and it's really about investing beyond myself. I think that's the key. Whether it's the different relationships that we spoke about before or the multi-generational, it's about looking beyond myself. And you both mentioned Abraham and Hebron. And in that conversation, we are reminded of this epic meeting between God and Abraham. And God says, when he's about to destroy Sodom and Amorah, often translated as Sodom and Gomorrah, he's about to destroy these towns, cities, communities. And he says, how can I possibly hold back from Abraham what I'm about to do? Because he's debating, should I tell Abraham or not? And he says, I know that he is going to direct his family and his generations after him to do righteousness and justice. And so God says, I'm going to tell him because I understand that he is going to give, he is going to invest in the generations that will follow, and the moral questions, the value questions, the ethics questions are going to be part and parcel of how he raises those generations, and that same trickle down that gets all the way down to where we are today. I mean, there are billions of people on the face of the earth who see Abraham as their forefather and or teacher. And so that's deep at the heart of this multi-generational that we spoke about before. But again, with that, let's just close on the theme or on the note of giving ultimately is about looking beyond ourselves. And there's so much about what it is that y'all are doing in Texas that I think so many people can learn from. Thank you, Lashawn and Revis, for kicking off our How Texans Give series and for what you gave us in the process. Revis and Lashawn gave us their stories, they gave us their history, they gave us a window into a way of life shaped by land, family, community, responsibility, and generations of selfless generosity. They invited us into a culture where giving is indeed a way of life. So Revis, Lashawn, thank you for what you've given to us. Now, before we leave, I want to make sure we leave you with this week's Giving Challenge, inspired by our conversation with Revis and Lashawn. One of the clearest lessons that emerged from today's conversation is that in ranching communities, giving is about people showing up. So let's call this the Show Up Challenge. Within the next 48 hours, respond to a real need in your world with your presence. Not by forwarding a message or a link, not by waiting for a fundraiser, not by assuming that someone else will show up, because after all, someone else always does. Instead, show up. A visit, a phone call, an hour of your time. A practical act that shows your support, and not only shows your support, really engages with the person, community member, or family member in need. After all, that is how generosity works in communities that feel that bond of community, in families, in communities that sometimes see themselves as family. In fact, that's what we experienced here in Israel over the course of the recent war. People showing up for other people, whether it was a bereaved family or someone supporting an injured individual. Sometimes it was just being there for a family that was called to the front lines, or at least one of those family members was, and finding what the needs were in the home with the family members and just being there, filling a need. So you got 48 hours to fill a need. Finally, a sincere thanks to Victoria Hurst for her continued support of You Are What You Give, and for helping make conversations like this one possible. Looking forward to seeing y'all on the next episode of How Texans Give. Thanks for listening. If this conversation resonates, please subscribe. It's a simple step that helps us share the word and build a community that values what we give more than what we take.